Hi everyone, thanks for joining us for this short but hopefully high impact session on spotting and staying ahead of financial risks and opportunities. My name is Jon Dudgeon from Blu Sky Chartered Accountants. We're a chartered accountants practice who work with fast growing, busy, ambitious entrepreneurial businesses across the UK, and I'm joined today by our CEO Steve Robinson, someone I've worked with for a number of years now. I know personally is brilliant at spotting both the danger signs and also the hidden gems in a business before sometimes anyone else sees them. Today's session is going to be hopefully no more than 20 minutes, and the aim is to leave you all with some ideas you can use straight away. But before we dive in, Steve, can you just give us the quick version of your life story, who you are, where you've been, and why this topic's so close to your heart?
Yeah, so I guess I left school and came straight into accountancy. So I've been doing this ever since I left school. Real passion for numbers and a passion for growing businesses. So yeah, what gets me out of bed in the morning is helping SMEs grow and I guess getting into the detail on that and yeah, the risks and opportunities alongside that, more the business side of things. I guess the numbers is key. I always like the fact that the numbers can't lie and that's really important. But it's more the kind of wider business side of things that really gets me excited and what the numbers can help tell you in the story around it. So yeah, been in accounts now for too long, 16 years. So yeah, plenty of experience and plenty to share as we go through this.
Brilliant, thanks, Steve. That's why you're here. So yeah, I think what we've learned over the years is the difference between thriving in a business sense and not just surviving sort of day to day largely comes down to a few things, but timing and awareness of kind of what's going on within your numbers as well. So let's start there. Why do so many owners and leadership teams wait until something's I guess properly on fire before they actually do anything about it? Is there any sort of key things that jump out for you, Steve, your experience?
Uh, yeah, probably a couple of things. I think it's human nature, I guess. I think some people, um, you're in a business day to day. I think you can sometimes get a bit stuck in the weeds, or you sometimes you can't see the wood for the trees. It's busy. Running a business is hard. It's not. We're not going to sit here and pretend it's easy. It is really hard running a business. So I think you can sometimes just get stuck in the fact that day to day you're doing a lot of operational stuff. There's a lot of things going on. You've probably got a million things to deal with and fires to put out. So then trying to turn that into taking a step back and trying to spot some of them risks early is really hard to kind of prioritize that thinking time, I guess. Yeah, it is a bit of a tough journey to go through. I've seen it before where you've kind of got businesses chasing the growth, going after those kind of um, bigger picture ideas. I guess they take their eye off some of that finer detail that they need to be aware of. Margins shrinking, focusing on turnover rather than profit, things like that. I'm sure we'll come on to some of these things as we go through, but yeah, you kind of see it day in, day out when you're working with business owners and kind of they've set out with a really good idea and as those kind of operational issues crop up, you do kind of lose focus of where you set out.
Yeah, I think so. And it's kind of human nature, isn't it? No one likes that bad news, and we often avoid it. And when you're in that scale up journey, it takes a certain individual maybe to keep their eye on the detail for one thing, but then when things aren't perhaps going in the right direction, putting the hand up and having that conversation at whatever level it needs to be had. I think we've seen time and time again where during that scaling journey, a business's debtor days, for a good example, start to slip and they can go quickly from being in a controllable position of 30 days. Suddenly you're looking at 60 days and no one's really keeping their eye on that particular KPI until cash flow gets into a tight position. So it goes from, it being an easy conversation to actually you need to put some emergency measures in. So the earlier you spot these problems and get into, I don't know, the rhythm, of looking at them, the more options you're going to sort of find quicker.
I guess it's 100% that, isn't it? I guess the quicker you spot them, it might kind of be really small little tweaks you can make. We talk a lot at Blue Sky about the little 1%, don't we? So it's kind of making those little 1% incremental changes day on day. And those little incremental changes, if you're making them early, can keep you on the right track. And I guess that's the key thing rather than waiting until, like you said, you've kind of got that huge kind of explosion in front of you. And then you need to make that massive course correction because you have kind of drifted off course. You've got a big problem and you need to go and make a dramatic change to the business, or you need to go and kind of do something quite dramatic to get you back on track. And those are the tough conversations that you ideally don't want to get into because you're probably making decisions for the business then that are on the back foot and probably out of necessity more than where you kind of want to be and making them strategically.
Yeah, I think in whatever size of business that you're operating in, it's ultimately, and different cultures vary, don't they? But to be able to go out into the public space of the business and you turn on something is like a tough call to make, isn't
Yeah,
it?
100%.
So I guess another thing we see a lot of is we're talking about blind spots on we're here either for the management team or for the leadership team or the founders. What are the sort of what are some of the blind spots that you've seen in SMEs and particularly those that are scaling up fairly quickly?
Yeah, I mean we've covered a few on the slide here. Um, Customer reliance is a big one. I've seen this a number of times at varying degrees. Um, to the extremes of where you've kind of got one customer being 80-90% of a business turnover. Um, I think as soon as you get, I mean, in the good old-fashioned accounting exams, it used to be kind of 10-20%, didn't it? You don't want to be above. I think that's a great place to be. I think when you see some businesses, and definitely when I've been working with businesses closely, you see it can kind of drift a little bit. So you're working with a client that 10-20% of revenue, it's good, profitable work. Then all of a sudden it slowly creeps and it becomes 40-50% of revenue. And then before you know it, it's 70-80-90% of revenue. Um, which is great when it's profitable and the customer's paying on time and everything else. Inevitably, what you end up with eventually is one customer holds a lot of cards there, and all of a sudden margins start to be squeezed or payment terms start to be pushed, and one customer essentially holds a lot of power in your business, and it can become quite uncomfortable. I've been party to a few conversations around this with various business owners over the years where bad debt happens or the margins or the payment terms, as I've mentioned, get pushed. And it can be really detrimental to a business to a point of business failure. So I'd always kind of stay clear of that one and keep an eye on it. Um, Suppliers and kind of key persons we've mentioned there as well to a same extent, but probably not as dramatic. Um, Supplier over reliance, I guess, is if you've got a small number of suppliers that can offer what you need, and then you've got an over reliance on one of them that can become detrimental. But supplier over reliance is generally a little bit easier to get out of because there's generally a competitive marketplace you can go to. Um, and key person over reliance is what you see a lot in SMEs. You've either got a business owner or a couple of business owners who started a business. And John, we've talked about this a lot when we're in kind of strategic planning sessions with clients, is that building a management team around them is really important, a leadership team. Um, See it a lot where you've then got one key person in the business making every decision, driving every conversation, every kind of strategic decision making is coming out of that person's head, and it does become over reliance is one thing for it, but you just cap every bit of growth the business has got and everything really at that one person. So again, we've had that conversation a lot of times with a lot of business owners, and it's tough. I guess the person who is that key person or the people who are the key people, it's a self-awareness piece as much as anything. They have to realize it and they kind of have to admit that the reliance is on them and they have to admit that they want to change that. That's the hardest bit with that really. And once they're past that, then generally you can move on pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think we call it key person risk, don't we? And we can boil that down to any function in the business. And I guess the function we see it the most in an SME or scaling business is the finance function. Often they can be one or two people deep, and if you've got that reliance on one person, it's fine if they're there, but suddenly they're on holiday or we're still, they leave the business, then suddenly we're looking at rebuilding processes almost from scratch under pressure, and that can impact the bottom line in the bank account quite quickly if we haven't got sort of the right systems and people in place to protect the finance reserves as well. And I guess the next point on there is cash, isn't it, Steve? Nothing sucks cash out of a business more than growth.
Yeah, I heard that a lot of times, and it really is true. I guess a lot of people don't really understand this, and I think the conversation probably links back to a presentation I've made several times, which is probably a layer beneath this, which is the difference between profit and loss and cash flow. And everyone kind of, when they're grown, looks at it and says, "Well, I'm profitable. Why is cash such a problem?" And I guess it comes back to that payment terms issue, and that you're potentially putting cash out the door for marketing activities, for staff salaries, for whatever it is to fuel growth. And then the sales can come in either at the same time or maybe a little bit afterwards because you're kind of front loading some of that growth. And before you know it, cash reserves that you've built up have been kind of swallowed pretty quickly and trying to grow. And it is a really fine balance of kind of keeping an eye on cash and making sure it's balanced with growth. And how you kind of do that. I guess there's funding available or debt or equity or finance or whatever you want to go down. But yeah, it is a very fine balance and fine kind of line to walk along.
And then that last one is all around, I guess, compliance drift or regulatory drift. So suddenly all the boring stuff, but necessary stuff around, say, your VAT, your contracts and compliance, suddenly they're bottom of the pile in growth mode. It's kind of like we'll do that tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, obviously from our point of view, the financial compliance is very simple in our eyes, but can become very complicated in the client's eyes. And then yeah, like you say, the legal side of things comes in. Quite often they're probably standard across all businesses that they need financial and legal compliance. And then each sector will have their own regulatory compliance as well, depending on what sector they're in. Obviously go through like your standard health and safety and things like that. That'll vary depending on business sector. Um, it can become very costly. Like you say, it's easy to push it at the bottom of the pile because it's probably not urgent today. All of a sudden you've ignored it for 6 or 12 months and it is very urgent and at the top of the pile when there's a big problem happening. So yeah, you've got to try not to ignore it and make sure the boxes are ticked as they need to be.
Sure. All right. So moving it on, I guess what we're talking about is maybe some the negative parts, but also in that same data that shows the risk to the business. They can also show the opportunities for the business as well. So I guess the question is, how do you find the upside when things are uncertain, which it always is these days, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And I guess we've touched on some of it already. Um, we, we've kind of talked about the financial side of things and then forcing you to have time to take a step back from the day to day and looking at things strategically. I think that's a really big part of this. I mean, John, again, we've talked about getting out of the same kind of scenery. We quite often go and sit in a coffee shop or something like that. Even just a different place of work can change your thinking, and you can think of things differently and look at some of those positives. I guess that's more the kind of nice thinking of things without any real data behind it. The thing that we kind of then look at is the like leading KPIs behind it. So for example, yeah, finances, like I said at the start, don't really lie. Your numbers don't lie. And again, I've had this conversation with a number of business owners that the finances are what they are. You can't kind of argue with sales that have been booked in a month. What the kind of bit behind that might be, though, that you've got a really strong sales pipeline that just hasn't quite been delivered yet. So that shows that the business is going through a really positive growth journey, really positive growth curve, but just hasn't quite got it into a set of monthly management accounts yet. So it's looking at some of those indicators that might not quite hit the P&L until a month or two down the line or even longer. But it's still important to keep an eye on them because if you can keep an eye on those and if you can get good leading KPIs, that's probably what is going to hit your finances a few months down the line. Um, so that really gives you that kind of insight into what's coming down the road.
Think we've had a great example fairly recently where we're looking at a client and their average sort of deal size was creeping up, and I hadn't really noticed that. When we started digging into it, what we realised is that they're actually selling more to their existing um, portfolio than they were to new clients, and suddenly that changed their insight and changed their focus on marketing and who they're marketing to, and also they started to pull out the retention rate around current clients as being one of those leading indicators as opposed to what they were looking at before. So sometimes it's just doubling down on what's quietly working and whirling away rather than chasing something shiny and new, isn't it? And that's all hidden within the data somewhere and being able to sort of pull that out and looking at the trend, I guess.
Yeah, I mean the data is key, isn't it? You can kind of act on intuition and sometimes you need to as a business owner and sometimes that is key. But anything you can back up with data, I think is always a stronger place to be. It kind of backs up that gut feel that you've got and gives you a little bit more kind of confidence behind the decisions you're making. And yeah, if you've got good trend data and you can act early on it, then all the better for it because you're probably going to be at the front of that curve. And that's always a nice place to be.
So yeah, if we can move on and talk a little bit about sort of the tools and habits, and it's often what we get asked as accountants is, what's the best tools to be using, but we'll look at, there's loads of technology and a whole bunch of other stuff out there at the minute, but if you're not actually in the habit of using those tools, then you're probably not going to get the best from them. So I guess, Steve, if you would just elaborate a little bit, if you were building, that finance dashboard for a growing business, what are the sort of three things that you'd be looking at putting on there, and a little bit, what's the value of them as well?
Yeah, so we've chucked three on the slide here. A 13-week cash flow forecast is critical when cash is tight more so. Probably see this less in businesses when they've got a load of cash in the bank, and if cash is pretty steady and pretty consistent, it's probably not as critical. But definitely either when cash is tight or if you're burning cash, if you've had some investment in, you're burning it at a pretty steady rate, I'd definitely focus on this. So 13 weeks is nice because it gets you through past your next VAT bill, which for a lot of businesses is a big kind of fork in the road for them. So 13 weeks, obviously 3 months out, get all your sales on there, get your costs on there. It doesn't have to be anything overly complicated. A lot of people still run this in an Excel spreadsheet. Like you said, there's a few bits of software now that is also doing it pretty well. But it just gives you that really simple view of quite short-term cash flow and allows for that really short-term decision making on if you've got decisions to make around um, cost or spend or anything like that. It's quite nice for it. You've then got things like a monthly dashboard for margins. So again, I guess the importance on this is spoke before about margins sliding. If you're in a position where you're running a business and you think you're doing really well, now again, I've seen this in businesses quite recently. You're doing really well, sales are growing, you think you're going to have a really positive month. All of a sudden, you're looking at your margins and they've slipped from what you think is 50, 60% gross margin down to 20, 30% gross margin. What you thought was going to be a really positive, profitable month, all of a sudden isn't. Um, so tracking that margin monthly at least, but if you can get that down to more frequently than that, then even better. Um, and then the KPI dashboard, what we've just been talking about. So get some forward-looking KPIs. Um, be able to look at things like a sales pipeline. Work in progress is a really good one. So things like, yeah, if you've got sales that are kind of confirmed contracts that are signed but aren't yet delivered to clients, so you've almost got sales that are being talked about, sales that are confirmed but not yet delivered, and then obviously your sales and your P&L that are confirmed and booked. from a sales point of view, and then you start getting all the costs and assets and all the kind of complicated ones you can start digging into depending on the business.
I think it's having that early warning system, which is your 13-week cash flow, isn't it? It's just helps you sleep at night and being able to look forward with some confidence, and then also just knowing what's profitable. No one, what's the point in selling something if it's not making you any profit? Type thought process. And outside of all of that, I guess the magic's with the habits, and making conversations around risk and opportunity just a standard agenda item on the leadership meetings. We often see when we first meet clients that finance is just this tag along thing, when really it needs to be. It's not just an update, but a proper conversation around the leadership team. Something at Blu Sky we do internally, but also with our clients, is making this conversation part of the culture. Finance isn't just a once a year budget review. It's baked into how we run the business and how we provide our services to clients as well. I think that's healthy to be having those conversations across a business about, yes, the risks, but also about what those risks mean in terms of an opportunity as well.
I think a really important thing with finances, I think one of the things that comes out is a lack of understanding across businesses and across management teams. So I think the more people, and we spend a lot of time doing this, don't we, is kind of going in and helping the senior leadership team or the senior management team understand the numbers, and I guess a lot of people understand a basic P&L or a basic cash flow, but it's then kind of digging beneath that and getting the balance sheet out and explaining that to clients, and really going into the numbers in another level of detail. So I think 100%, if you can kind of just spread that understanding, the more people that understand the numbers and can ask questions, and we encourage that in every meeting that we'll have with every client, is ask questions, dig into numbers, try and understand more, and that can only be a healthy thing for businesses.
Yeah, I think it's using the technologies to give you time to think, not just report, isn't it? And that's the best way. Right, getting near that 20-minute mark, we might have even gone over a lot of sight of time, but we're into this quick fire Q&A. One of the questions that we get asked loads that we'll concentrate on here is, how should a scaling business be looking at it? How often should a scaling business be looking at its numbers, Steve? Is there any sort of rhythm or tips around that you'd expect?
Um, Definitely weekly. You should definitely have some kind of view on things weekly. So we touched on the cash flow weekly. I'd probably have some kind of sight on sales weekly, um, KPIs at least monthly, and definitely have monthly management accounts. And then probably more strategically, quarterly for things like a budget review, or more strategic decision making on a quarterly basis linked to the numbers. So yeah, it's kind of different time periods for different things.
And I think in a business, having that rhythm and discipline to do those things you've mentioned, weekly, monthly, and quarterly, over and over again, is really the key, and the strength, and the discipline underneath it. And I'll probably also add that when things are volatile, things aren't going the way you want to, then tighten up. Those weekly, those monthly reviews become weekly, and the quarterly reviews kind of become monthly, and not be afraid to do that piece. Okay, so I think we're in the wrap-up phase now. Steve, what's your three key takeaways?
Yeah, we've got them on here. I guess act early. So when you see things going wrong, don't bury your head, don't ignore them. See that a lot from people. Make sure you act early. Make sure you ask questions. If you've got that understanding we talked about, then yeah, get in and make decisions. Um, I'm very much a positive person, so every time there's a risk comes out, I'll look for the opportunity in it. So I think that second point there, opportunity hides in risk. Um, every time there's a risk, there's probably an opportunity to do something positive from it. So yeah, I think a lot of people can finance naturally probably has a bit of a negative connotation for a lot of people. Um, I just challenge people to turn it on its head and look at it through positive lens, and see what they can see positively from it, and where the opportunities are in it. And John's already kind of touched on it, but habits. habits beat heroics every time, rather than having to make those kind of flashy decisions or think you need to make big decisions all the time. Just that habitual weekly, monthly, quarterly rhythm will absolutely smash most things. So yeah, get the habits nailed and get something that works and just keep doing it week in, week out, and it absolutely will get you there.
Brilliant. Couldn't agree more. So thanks, Steve. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. And if you want to keep the conversation going, please connect with myself or Steve on LinkedIn or drop us a message at Blue Sky. And I guess just to take away, the worst time to think about risk is when you're already in it. So please start now.